So Michelle, are the cucumber plants doing okay? Are they producing cucumbers?
So I had this tremendous cucumber plant, and somebody told me, "Oh, you got to prune it." So I started pruning it, and summarily killed it. So I had to go buy a new.
I don't think you were supposed to use a weed eater to prune it, Michelle. That might have been the.
That was, and this is only my second year trying this gardening thing, and so last year I only got tomatoes. So when I killed my plant, I was like, I've got to get another one. So it was early enough in the season that I did go get another one. So
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm growing hot peppers, and one of my hot pepper plants is doing great. I think the other one, we had so much rain for a while that, pepper plants don't do well with too much water. And I think the one of my pepper plants just got basically drowned. Was the problem.
Well, I grew some peppers too, and I thought I had bell peppers, but they kept growing long, and I'm like, this is not a bell pepper. Come to find out, I picked the wrong thing. I had some hybrid sweet pepper. So
it's probably a Serrano. That sounds like probably what that was. Yeah. They're good though, Michelle. They're not super hot.
No, because I can't do super hot, but this is interesting. It's interesting.
Well, I am showing 10 o'clock, Ashley, so I think we are good for, oh my God, if all of y'all can see that Jason Smith has just logged on, and hopefully you can all see his avatar. It is quite something to see. Perhaps career limiting. Hey, Crash. Was that your high school senior photo? All right, Dr. Duggins, take it away.
All right. So we'd like to welcome everybody to the 972nd meeting of the North Carolina Board of Pharmacy. I'll read our ethics statements now. In accordance with the State Government Ethics Act, it is the duty of every board member to avoid both conflict of interest and appearance of conflict. Does any board member have any known conflict of interest or appearance of conflicts with respect to any matter coming before the board today? If so, please identify the conflict or appearance of conflict and refrain from any participation in the particular matter involved. Everybody good?
Yep, hearing none.
All right. Hand it over to you, Jay.
First item, Madam President, will be the minutes from the June 2020 meeting, which you all received last week. And they are available behind your tab. So happy to answer any questions or receive any corrections on those.
I already see the agenda in the minutes while having this live 8x8 meeting, but thank goodness I have my iPad. Motion to approve the minute.
Second.
Ashley, it sounded to me like a motion from Bill and a second from Michelle. If you'd like, Ashley, I can go ahead. I got to do the roll call votes, remember,
Sure.
on this, so I'm happy to do that. Please, when I call your name, please say yay or nay or ahoy or whatever. Ashley Duggins?
Yay.
Bill Mixon?
Yay.
Keith Vance?
Yay.
Andy Bowman?
Ahoy.
Michelle Corbin?
Yes.
And Wallace Nelson?
Yes, here.
Okay, so that is unanimous, and the minutes are adopted, Madam President.
Perfect.
The next item is you all have a copy. Michelle is subject to the same thing that you all are as board members for a review of her statement of economic interest by the North Carolina Ethics Commission to identify any actual or potential conflicts that could impact board service. And under the State Government and Ethics Act, when a agency receives one of those, it is required to discuss that evaluation at its next public meeting. So you have a copy of Michelle's her evaluation. The commission did not identify any actual conflict of interest that would affect Michelle's service to the board. It identified one potential conflict of interest, but it is not a potential conflict of interest, A, that I think is very likely to materialize, and B, certainly does not impact Michelle's service on the board. The commission simply noted that Michelle serves as the operations contractor for a property and casualty insurance company, People's Insurance, which we all already knew, of course. And if it were the case that the board were to buy or sell any real property, if in the context of doing that, we affiliated with People's Insurance, for any aspect of that Michelle would need to know, she would need to recuse from that particular matter. But I certainly don't plan for us to be disposing of any real estate. There's one little parcel here in this building we'd love to acquire if it came available, but I don't think that's going to happen. So this is just a very standard, clean report from the Ethics Commission. And Michelle, as everyone knows, anytime anybody has any question about anything involving a potential conflict of interest, all you need to do is reach out to me or to Clint. We'll help you navigate that. So, Madam President, Michelle is absolutely clear through the SEI review to continue with her board service.
That's awesome. And we welcome Michelle. Can't wait to meet her in person.
Again. I look forward to it.
And Michelle, just a quick reminder, at some point here in the next couple of months, if you could, you're going to need to go online and do your ethics training through the Ethics Commission. Again, if you're having trouble with insomnia or other similar type things, you might find that to be a cure. And Ashley, you and I have already talked, your deadline on that's coming up toward the end of August. So yes. Everybody's in good shape, got plenty of time. And I think all the rest of us are, Keith, I think you and I are due next year, and I think everybody else is due 2 years. So that is that, Madam President.
All right. Looks like we're moving on to COVID-19 matters.
Yeah, not a whole lot to update. Ashley, as you know, and all the board members know, I've been sending you all periodic updates about trends and that sort of thing. The numbers continue to be not what we would like them to be. Although this week there has been some slightly encouraging news if it holds, and that's the question here, that percent positive tests have dipped slightly. They had been running somewhere between 10 and 11%. Over the past few days, they're running closer to 8%. That's obviously a positive development and a positive trend if it continues. What we are all braced for, however, is the post-July 4th weekend numbers, and that we would start seeing if July 4th activities did cause some additional spikes, we should start seeing those in the next week. So, but let's hope that folks did the things they needed to do over that weekend to avoid yet another spike. Hospital census was down slightly over the past couple of days from COVID, but we are still beginning to get into the area of concern with bed space, particularly intensive care unit space. Statewide intensive care unit beds are at right at or slightly above 80% capacity. Another significant spike could put that into sort of in the red, but we'll see what happens. Testing numbers in North Carolina continue to go up, and there are some challenges, though, that have manifested with respect to testing. We are sort of getting back to where we were in March in terms of certain shortages of testing supplies. Testing reagents are becoming increasingly hard to come by. And a new shortage that has emerged is plastic pipette tips. And Michelle, I'm looking at the look on your face, Michelle. I'm like, yeah, what the heck is a pipette tip? So a pipette is a little device, that you pull up small volumes of liquid to pull up samples and mix them and the like. And those are, of course, hand-sized plastic device with a plunger trigger, but they have individual plastic tips to do, and we're starting to see shortages of those. North Carolina DHHS is sort of in a scramble the alert aircraft mode to try to find North Carolina plastics manufacturers, of which there are a lot, to find North Carolina plastics manufacturers that might be capable of turning toward manufacturing these. But as those of you who've done any sort of analytical chemistry know, that's a bit of a hard pivot, because to make pipette tips, and they are subject to very strict tolerances and reproducibility and the like, so that is going to be a challenge. Some folks at DHHS said straight out that they believe that unless the president invokes the Defense Production Act in a meaningful way to begin to deal with this particular shortage and reagent shortages, this is likely to get much, much worse over the next month. So that's a troubling development, and I'll keep y'all posted, of course. With respect to testing, I don't have much new to report. We had a lower number of licenses issued last week, but we're not completely sure what the reason for that was, because Stacy updated us on some numbers today, and Stacy, looking at those, it appears that folks who have registered or applied for license with us and registered us are testing within 30 days of having done that. So that's very encouraging that folks continue to apparently find slots to test, and it may be that last week's lower than average number was an anomaly, but I will keep you all posted on that. Missy, I did want to turn it over to you real quick for some additional licensing numbers and discussion.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much more to report. I made the little chart under your link about just the numbers of, candidates that we license each week, primarily exam. Stacy does an amazing job at licensing and keeping track of numbers over the years. And so, we can see that things are a little bit lower, but like Jay said, it's hard to know right now if that's an anomaly or if that's actually true. Reciprocity candidates are still coming in pretty readily. So, I mean, things are moving, maybe not exactly as people aren't getting licensed as much as they have been, but, I think we'll just have to wait and see how that goes. Permits and DMEs are still doing great. The not waiving the permit meeting is still working fantastic. Wendy's doing a great job with that. She licenses those on Mondays on the permit meeting day. So we're still sticking to that schedule. And technicians, always, there's a lot of those. So Debbie's doing a great job in doing those. So, I mean, really, there's not much more to report. That lower number this week was, something we're watching. So we're keeping an eye on that, and we'll certainly report next month, or maybe September, I guess, if there's no board meeting in August.
Yeah, and so the cumulative numbers are on page 24 of the handouts behind your tab on this. And so just a reminder to board members, and maybe Michelle, because you wouldn't have any reason to know this, we issue licenses to pharmacists every Thursday. So we sort of collect everybody. It is Thursday, isn't it?
It is. Mm-hmm.
There, years ago, we used to issue licenses every day as test scores came in, but that created a number of procedural challenges. So we anyone who's gotten who's had a score, the passing scores reported to us by the end close of business on a Wednesday gets licensed the following Thursday, and then we start the cycle over again. So, but you will see when you look at that chart, the third week in July last week, that was an anomalously low number of licensees. But 2 weeks ago, we had an anomalously high number of licensees. So we can't figure out whether this is a trend or whether it's a blip, but we're watching it very closely.
Missy, this is Ashley. I have a question. I know that it's probably been about 6 weeks ago that there was an email for North Carolina pharmacies to go on to NABP and register for an e-profile number. I know there was some problems with that. I saw some emails, and I know that I did that, and I remember having to log that in to the board. I know that's not due until, I believe, when we renew, but I wanted to see how that was going as well.
Missy, let me jump in on that. Two things on that, Ashley. Yes, you are correct. There was I think the particular challenge that some folks were running into was that if you had an email address that was already affiliated with an NABP profile, which was likely to be your personal profile, and you were also using, for good reason, especially like in your case, Ashley, you use that same email address for a business e-profile, that was causing the system to wrap itself around the axle. Two things on that. One is that NABP pushed out an update to the system on the 13th, which they anticipated would resolve that particular issue. Missy, have we seen more or less calls?
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken to Wendy, and she hasn't received any calls, any angry calls like we were receiving before. And I haven't gotten any feedback as well. So, but I have noticed on NABP's website under our portal that we go into, some of the icons have changed. So I do think an update of some sort did go in. But I haven't received any feedback.
I know the update went in on the 13th for sure.
Okay, great.
Actually, the other thing, and this is all highly preliminary, is I've been having some discussions with NABP about the possibility that we may be able to push our permittee database up to them, and they will assign e-profile numbers and then push it back out to the permits to let them know you now have an e-profile number, and hopefully to push it back into our system. That's the key. I mean, in terms of our pushing our permittee census up to them, we could do that right now. What we want to make sure, though, is that there is if this is going to work at all, that there's a robust plan to let permittees know you now have an e-profile number and here it is, and B, that it gets pushed into the right field in our system so that we don't have to either A, manually enter those ourselves, or B, folks get an e-profile number and they reasonably think, well, I've got one, I don't need to enter it. And then we get to renewal period and we have what would be some understandable frustration from folks if that's the case. So we're working on that as a possibility too, but I don't want to push anything out in terms of an announcement until we're absolutely certain that could happen. If it does, that would be terrific. Because among other things, we know that some folks have been entering their NCPDP number for an e-profile number, because years and years and years ago, the NCPDP number was called an NABP number. And so, if you got one back then and they told you it was an NABP number, well, that's what you're going to enter. That's what a rational. So if we can do this sort of push, that would also be a means that NABP could go in and clear out any numbers that are not actually e-profile numbers. So stand by on that.
Okay, I know people still have plenty of time. I just knew there was some confusion and problems, and I wanted to check on that. So
we are all of like mind on that, Ashley. Yeah, Keith, go ahead, brother.
I had two pharmacists call me within the last week, and they said that they had tried to call NCPDP, as far as for NABP for the e-profile number, get some help with it. And they were on hold over an hour and ended up having to leave a message.
Well, if they call you back, Keith, and they're still having trouble, just tell them to give us a call.
Yeah, you can send them to me because we have had some correspondence with NABP and they've given us a more direct number to call rather than just the customer service line. So that might
Okay.
help.
And
Yeah,
we don't mind.
I-
And Keith, we don't mind them coming through us because it may be that there's, if it's something on our end, we can help them with that immediately. So please, absolutely, if somebody's frustrated with that, tell them to give us a call. We'll help them.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, man.
And I'm not on video because my connection is not very good, and I can figure out I can hear if I don't have video on. So,
Well, you sound like you're in good voice, Keith. Anything else on any of that? That's all the updates I had on that.
Ashley, I just wanted to mention one more thing too, that we did make one small change under facility management. And so instead of the NABP ID, which a lot of people did mistake as the PDP number, we have changed that text. So it says business NABP e-profile number. So hopefully that'll direct people in the right field to enter that number. So
Right.
that's just one small change that we hope will help.
And I do apologize to folks out there that had frustration in the first round, but that's, that was one of the reasons we put it up in June, as we figured there would inevitably be some gremlins that we needed to wash out of the system. So we didn't want to get to November 1st and deal with it at that point. But keep sending them. Yeah, either send someone to us if they are frustrated that they don't think they've gotten the help they need, or shoot me or Missy an email if there's something that we need to know about out there, or something that y'all run into that you think we may need to look at as a mid-course correction
And I guess
from our end.
a reminder probably in the next couple of months, just to
Oh,
remind everybody to do that. I just hate for there to be so many calls in November and December with people frustrated,
Yeah, and we are actually that weekly sort of what happened this week email that we're pushing out here. Right, every single one of those has a reminder on it.
Okay,
And
great.
we'll do some other reminders as
Okay.
well. But we're gonna shout it from the rooftops at every opportunity.
For me, it was a couple week process of having to wait for them to call me back and get things straightened out. And so I just want to make sure that everybody knows what to expect and anticipating that it's not going to be a 1 day or just an hour long process, and it could take a little time to do
Yep.
that.
We are all of like mind on that, Ashley. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Jay. And thank you, Missy, for the update.
Of course.
I can shift. This is actually makes for a decent segue. There probably isn't much to talk about, but as you all let me, Ashley, with your indulgence, can I skip ahead to the FDA MOU real quick?
Yeah, of course.
Because there is a connection between what we were just discussing and the FDA MOU. I don't have anything new at all to report about that. And as you all know from the past couple of meetings, we've got plenty of time to figure out whether we're going to enter into that MOU or not. And as you all know, one of the things that we think would be very helpful to us in determining how that would work is that if our board can become a part of the piloting of NABP's compounding data collection and reporting system, because if that gets off the ground and works very well, that radically reduces the resources that we would have to expend at a board level to collect certain data and report certain data as part of the MOU. And if we can get all of our permittees with their NABP e-profile numbers, that would mean that if you all decided that it would be a good thing to join in that pilot program, we'd be able to do that immediately. Because all of our permittees would already have an e-profile number, and that would allow NABP to easily reach out and start pulling folks into that. So that is the segue. Now, that is not the reason that we announced in June that we were going to start enforcing the e-profile requirement. The reason was there was a portal, which turned out to not be quite as easy as we hoped it would, but a portal way to do that. But the other unintended benefit is if we get this done and most of our permittees have e-profile by the end of the year, if you guys decide you want to be a part of that pilot project, all we'll have to do is say, turn the key on that, and that will give us the experiential information that I think we're going to need about the MOU.
That sounds good to me.
The other thing is, and I think we can talk about it later this fall, but I think it may be around October. Something to keep on your mind. At some point, I think it would probably be wise if we were able to be in a position to signal to the regulated community sort of our preliminary thoughts about whether the board is inclined to enter into that MOU. And get that out there so we would have some time for some feedback from folks before we do that. But that's a discussion item for later in the fall, but just putting a pin in that to consider.
Jay, so is that MOU available now to enter into? That's the first question. The second question, I assume we have the regulatory authority to do so.
Yeah, two things. Yeah, the MOU is readily available to anyone who wants to see it. And in terms of regulatory authority, yes, we do. You remember, Bill, that one of our comments to the FDA in both rounds of the proposed MOUs was the MOU said that the state, capital S state, was entering into the MOU agreement, and we commented back that we are a state agency, but we are not, quote, the state, capital right. S, and we were concerned about, A, did we have the authority to enter into that if we wanted to, and B, and I don't think we did, and B, I was not even sure what the process would be for that. It would probably be a very lengthy one, but the final version, I should say, of the MOU makes clear that it is an agreement between the specific state agency and the FDA. So we certainly have the authority to enter into that if we wish to do so.
Well, from my perspective, there's no downside to signing it, and lots of potential downside to not signing it. So, I mean, how much farther down the road do we need to kick this can?
Well, you could authorize signing it tomorrow. The thing that's still out there that I think is the imponderable, hard to know right now, is it does, as you know, Bill, places fairly substantial data collection and reporting obligations on us, and we had made some, I thought, pretty good suggestions about how to alter the MOU in a way that would allow FDA to get data to serve what I believe its purposes were, which were largely to sort of be able to build a database of who the larger interstate compounders were, so they would know how to direct their resources. Because of a concern we had about the amount of data that we would need to be collecting and parsing and potentially auditing. And FDA did not take those suggestions. Instead, they've authorized NABP and given NABP quite a big chunk of money to come up with a system that states could opt into. So I tend to agree with you, Bill, that the upsides of signing the MOU are significantly higher than the downsides. I personally would feel a little bit more comfortable if we had a notion of what the NABP collection and reporting system was going to be, and if it was going to work. And if it turned out that that it didn't work well, or we didn't want to do it, that's okay. We could start implementing our own systems. But what I would like to do, given we've got still about 11 months that we can decide this, I just would like to get that piece of information. But if y'all are comfortable and want to sign on up, there's nothing stopping us from doing that.
Well, personally, I think we were going to talk about this more at the retreat, which may or may not happen at this point. But
right.
If they're not going to implement it for 11 more months, and there's no big rush, I would like for North Carolina to be a leader in this area, and I certainly would like to see us be able to participate in the pilot project with an EVP. Personally,
My hopes are exactly the same as yours, Bill. Why don't we do this? How about for the say? I know we're going to talk about whether and how we're going to have a retreat shortly, but Bill, what I'd be happy to do is let's plan on, in whatever forum we're having a meeting in September, let's get this on the agenda for and be prepared to have more discussion on that, and I will work between now and then to hopefully get nailed down a timeline on the NABP pilot project and what would be required of us, and report that back.
that certainly works.
Okay.
Well,
So,
but I'm just one of several, so I want to make sure the rest of the board fully understands.
I agree with all that. I think that's great. I'd love to be a part of the pilot too.
I have certainly let NABP know, based on our prior conversations on the MOU, that my sense was that the board was very much willing and eager to be a part of the pilot project. So I will gather, and this is one of the reasons, Ashley, I keep putting this on the agenda, is for exactly the reason or for exactly the purpose that we're doing right now, is as we start thinking about these things every time, that I'm collecting all that and getting you guys what you need. So when it comes time to make the final decision, we've looked at it from every angle we need to.
Sounds good.
All right, I'm on it. I'll back up then, Ashley, to Southeastern, easy for me to say, district board member election.
Boy, I'm sure
you all-
I'm glad, Jay, that y'all are going to address that, because the guy from Southeast, y'all got to do something with that guy.
we will let the polities speak on that, but so I think everyone knows that Andy's current term, and he is certainly eligible to run for a second 5-year term. His first 5-year term on the board expires on April 30th of next year. Andy, frankly, it's hard to believe we're coming up on 5 years of that. And so Kristen and I and Antoine have been doing the preliminary planning for the election. You all know that we had last year was our first experience under the new election rules, where it continued, of course, to be an electronic voting system, but it was the first year that we ran elections concurrently with the renewal period. And as Kristen and I reported back in April or March, it did seem to increase the voting participation in a significant way. Not as much as we had hoped, but the direction was certainly positive, and it was significant. That will be the same process this year, and so the Southeastern District election will open on November 1st, 2020, and it will run through March 1st, 2021. And you guys see in your memo there the Southeastern District counties, and of course a pharmacist who is licensed and residing in one of those counties at the time of election is eligible to run. And as you all also know, every pharmacist in the state is eligible to vote in that election, not just the pharmacists who reside in the Southeastern District. Kristen and I are planning to do a candidate interest forum, as we have done every year in recent years. We've selected Wednesday, September 9th to do that. It will be a virtual conference for the obvious reasons. And for those of you, Ashley, I know you participated in one of those. Ashley, we will not be having it at the Ashboro Hampton Inn, just FYI.
Well, that's a shame, but it's high class, so very high class.
But for what we do with that is, I think there's some value, and the reports back from these over the years have been that there is some value to having an opportunity where anyone who has an immediate or even theoretical interest in running for the board, either now or at some time in the future, going through exactly what board service is. What is board service? What is not board service? Sometimes that's a bigger issue. Giving a very clear description of what the time commitment is, giving reassurances about that you don't have to dip into your own pocket to run as a board. So we'll go through all of those things and provide a lengthy opportunity for questions and answers. So we're planning to do that in September. And that means that will occur a good 3 weeks before the deadline, which will be October 1st, for any candidate who wishes to stand for that election to submit a petition signed by 10 pharmacists residing in the Southeastern District to the board office. So that's our plan. Kristen, I've probably left things out that you will need to correct.
That made me think of a question, Jay.
Sure.
Given what we're dealing with COVID, are you guys going to be willing to accept some kind of electronic signature type of thing?
Yeah, it's a great question, Andy. It's something I've been noodling over a little bit here. I want to talk to Clint further. I think probably the answer is yes. I think if we use some sort of VeriSign type thing, but I will round up with Clint on that and make sure if we announce to folks that that's acceptable, that we've really got that nailed down. Because you're right, for obvious reasons, people may not want to get in their car and drive from place to place and get signatures. I will absolutely run that down, Andy. And in fact, Andy, I'll make sure that whatever the answer is on that, that will be a part of the candidate interest forum, as well as information we put on the website for folks who are thinking about running.
10-4.
Thanks for the great question, Andy. Thank you. Any other questions on any of that? It's Kristen. Yep. Go ahead, Bill.
So, for re-election, does another petition have to be obtained? And
yes, it's a legal requirement for all candidates, whether first term or re-election.
Then there's a chance, Bowman, to fix the election.
Well, I tell you what, I've got an elaborate campaign strategy. Just last night, I selected my vice president. It's my Schnauzer Odin will be my running mate, and I'm looking to get some votes from him. We'll see. I know at least Ashley's dog will vote for me because of Odin.
Well,
I'm sure Thomas will communicate with Odin about treats and the like.
Okay.
To get that.
Is Odin, is he rabid?
Vote for me or else.
I'll make sure, Andy, that Sadie knows exactly what to do.
Okay.
Very good. Well, we'll keep y'all posted, and yeah, I'll get the electronic signature thing run down very quickly here, Andy. Thanks again on that.
Yeah, you'll need to fill Michelle in on offline on the background on that inside
Sure.
joke.
Yeah, I will do that, and I think offline is the right format to do that. Legislative update. My apologies. The memo you've got there is actually the same as it's the same memo I sent last month, but there's really nothing new to report on that. Fundamentally, H1053 did pass. That was some amendments to the military trained or military spouse occupational licensure. Really for us, as I discussed before, the only change that it really required of us in the short term was to put some additional information on our website and communicate that with the Secretary of Military and Veterans Affairs, which is Larry Hall. Missy and I got on that right off the bat. We got an FAQ updated that covered all of the things and more that the statute requires. Clint gave it a review and a thumbs up. So that has already been posted in a couple of places on the website, and I've reported that to the Secretary. So we are all caught up there. The other, I guess, substantial change in that was it used to be that a licensing board had to make a decision about whether a military spouse or military trained applicant was eligible to use the provisions of that statute within 30 days. That's been changed to a 15-day deadline. But Missy had such a efficient process set up to do that we've never come anywhere close to a 15-day deadline, even when we had 30. So we don't think that's going to impact our operation in any way, because Missy anticipated it all and had it fixed. So we're good on that. Senate 773, the Universal License Recognition Act, that did not emerge back out of Senate rules before the Senate adjourned. As I discussed before, in terms of this type of bill, it wasn't the worst one I've ever seen, but there was still some potential for mischief. I think it's a topic I've mentioned before we should keep our eyes on when the legislature reconvenes for the long session next year. But for now, no action on that. And Bill, you may have seen Senator Wells, who is the principal sponsor of this bill, and has been, as you all know, very active in the occupational licensing issues, has resigned from the legislature. I think his term was up anyway at the end of this year, because he could not run for re-election because he ran for lieutenant governor, but he has formally retired from the legislature. I think it's effective this Friday. Whether and how that's going to affect any dynamics on these occupational licensing issues, I don't know, but we'll just see how things shake out next year.
No, I did not know
that. So that's it. Unless there are any questions on legislative updates, we'll hold our breath and wait for the long session starting in January.
Jay, before I lose it, I think we're gonna, because
too late, Andy.
Yeah, I think of these things, and if I wait too long, it'll go away. We're getting ready to hit rulemaking.
Yep.
I told you I talked on the phone with Jorge Carrillo yesterday from McKesson.
McKesson
Pharmacy. Right. And he brought to light something you're probably aware of, and some of us may have heard of or communicated with people, that given COVID and things as we move forward, there is some more discussion out there about remote order entry or working from home post-COVID, whatever post-COVID looks like. That has gotten more legs from a standpoint of how are we going to do business once we get through this thing. And my question is I think it might be a good idea if we can do a virtual meeting like this. I think we probably ought to entertain the idea of getting that ad hoc committee active, even if it's virtually, because we may have even more interest in that activity going forward than we did when we started.
Andy, I've heard the same chatter, and it's completely understandable and appropriate that some folks have made significant adjustments to their workflows and processes, and are rightly sort of saying, if there's no public safety issue, will we be able to continue to do this afterward? I think all that's right, and I agree with you that I think what we ought to be shooting for is come this fall. We've got a break here. We don't meet in August, and I'll just be quite candid. I'm ready for a break here. I'm burned out. And but I think that's going to give us a pause. And what among my list of things to do over the break before our next meeting is exactly that, Andy, is particularly with the telepharmacy committee, figure out a schedule and a method of convening that, because I think you're right. I think we need to look. I would like to think that this emergency is going to be over in the short term, but the answer is it's not. So we're not under, unfortunately, we're not under a gun to that we need to think about these things for the next month, in a month or so. But you're right, Andy. Whenever the state of emergency is lifted and these waivers go away, I do think it's incumbent on us to have something fairly concrete in place to say, well, this is what's still going to be allowed post waiver and this is not, or whatever the case may be. I think you're right.
Okay, thank you.
And Jay, this is Ashley. I know that Andy will be serving on that committee with Keith and Wallace, and I'm sure Wallace is also probably going to, and Andy as well, need an update of where we left off.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's been several months ago, and I'd have to have a recap myself because I
absolutely.
Wow.
I've got a folder with all of that, and that's also part of it. That before the committee reconvenes will be sort of a reorientation, as it were, of what the issues are and sort of where the committee was at the time that the lockdown occurred. Agree, completely agree.
And I know I'm trying to remember the name of that guy that was willing to do a presentation at the next board meeting.
Yeah, Genu Phillip.
Yeah, so hopefully he could definitely do that virtually.
Right. Oh, I'm sure he could. I don't think that would be any problem whatsoever.
Maybe we could get that Rockio character involved too. I don't know.
Yeah, and John could still be involved in that, but that's part of. I need to get everybody reoriented and come up with a schedule. So I will. That's absolutely one of my homework assignments between now and when we next get together. Clint, I don't think there's much to report on the Section 2000 rules, but do you want to report on that?
Wake up, Clint.
He's out there, I know.
Yeah, I never heard anybody else saying, so if you can't hear me, I'm sorry. I attended the Rule Review Committee meeting last week, which is much more pleasant now that it's not in person, and the procedure rules have been approved and will be in place starting August 1st.
I'm not getting any of that.
Yeah, I'm going to repeat it.
The COVID drug prevention rule that is currently in place is temporary.
Yeah, I'm going to repeat all that because I know Clint sounded like he was on an auto tuner out there. We had some technical corrections to make that were requested by the Rules Review Committee staff. Thanks to Clint's efforts over the years building that relationship, that went exceptionally well. The Rules Review Commission did approve those rules with minor technical changes. They will go into effect on August 1st. And as you guys already know, the COVID drug preservation rules were approved in their temporary form. And as we mentioned last month, we may, here around September or October, need to look at those again and decide whether there may be a need to move into the permanent rulemaking on those. So that will be a topic for the fall. So I think that captured. Yep.
So the agenda says Section 2000 rule amendments hearing procedure. So is there something about our internal hearing procedures that they're questioning or that will change, or is that?
No, recall that was the big package of rules, Bill, that you guys approved that there were a number of amendments. There was one new rule. There were a couple of rules that were repealed just to modify, essentially take our hearing process rules and do two things. One, make them match our actual processes, clear up some ambiguities, and C, make sure that our rules were completely aligned with the Administrative Procedure Act. So that's what all of that package was.
And the upshoot from that is it's all approved?
Yep,
Or most
all was approved. Yep, completely approved. We had to make some technical changes. The Rules Review Committee, Clint is an anti-Oxford comma guy, but the Rules Review people are pro-Oxford comma people, so we had to make a bunch of those changes. But all in all, they were very minor, non-substantive things that we had to do.
Thank you.
Sure. I am now then going to turn, I think it's the right time. JP, I think I see JP on the.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, man. So I'm going to turn it over to JP to give the financial reports, which is both the monthly and the unaudited year-end financial reports. So JP, take it away, man.
Sure. Keep this brief. You guys all got the memo. Another year where the board outperformed our budget. Obviously, the pandemic and the shutdown and the operating expenses were a bit restricted in these last few months, which helped us even more. But if you do look at the memo, the unaudited financials right now, it looks like you can think of it as net income, the excess revenue, 700. Keep in mind that it's about 155 of unrealized, meaning non-cash, right? That's our investments. Those are not gains that have realized in any way, shape, or form yet. Aside from that, I don't have much to say. I'm happy always, as always, to delve into the weeds if people want more insight or explanations on numbers. The numbers you did receive, as Jay mentioned, these are unaudited. So as I close our fiscal year end, I'll be capitalizing certain assets. We have accrued vacation. That's a rather large expense, depreciation expense. And those are all non-cash expenses, which is why they're not on these financials. And we don't budget for those in terms of our operating budget. And then we have our financial audit scheduled for the end of August. Not quite sure how that's going to play out yet. Jay, do you know anything about? I know we haven't talked to them specifically. I think they're still planning on being here that last week of August, but I'm not sure if we'll.
Yeah, I've not talked to them. I'm like you. I know that we're going to have it August 24th through the 28th, and I'm sure we will have to make a number of allowances for distancing and the like.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't know.
I've already uploaded many of the items that they'd want to see at this point, anyhow.
Yep.
So. I'm sure it'll be smooth sailing regardless of whether they're able to come into the office physically or not. Any questions, concerns from anybody? Again, I'm happy to spend as much time as you want. I'm also happy to cede the floor if there's more pressing issues at hand.
Any questions for JP?
Sounds like we're good. Thank you.
We are. We
Yeah.
are.
We're good. We still have money to operate.
Thank you, JP.
Thanks, everybody.
Sure. Investigative report. I'm not sure which of the investigative folks is delivering that today.
That will be me today.
All right, JK, take it away, man.
Good morning, everybody. As you'll see behind your tab for the investigative stats, since the beginning of the year up through July 16, we've had a total of 181 cases. They still seem to keep coming in despite the pandemic. Procedural legal is leading the way with 52. The AOC charges keep coming in, so I guess folks are either day drinking or weekend drinking still and still not behaving. We have our error and omissions at number 3 with 30. Inspection follow-ups, which are a little bit tough to get to right now as we're not back out in the field. I know Crystal may have a word or two about that here in a few minutes, but we've got 26 of those. Diversion, that's kind of on the downswing a little bit with only 16. 4 for substance abuse, and then of course tying are the incident reports and complaints that we categorize as other with 3. As far as surrenders go, up through the 16th of July, technicians continue to lead the way with 17. We still have only 3 pharmacists, the 1 mid-level nurse practitioner, and then of course 1 DME. So like I said, things keep going along pretty smoothly in the investigation and inspections department. Like I said, I know Crystal has done some good work on how we're going to get back out in the field, and I think that is on the agenda here. But anybody has any questions about the numbers or anything else, happy to answer.
Thank you, Josh. Any questions for Josh?
Yeah, I have a question. These numbers look to be roughly the same from year to year. Is that generally the case?
Right.
Yeah, we have.
It is. I mean,
Go ahead, Josh.
Just like anything, Bill, you know, complaints kind of ebb and flow, you know, and it sometimes we'll get in a lot and sometimes we won't, but our numbers do seem to be pretty consistent, you know, year after year with, you know, certain points of the year and then end of the year, you know, ending in between somewhere of, you know, 300 to 400 complaints that, you know, we have looked at throughout the year.
Is there any way to take this information and help educate pharmacists on, I mean, pitfalls or people making the same mistakes going on, you know, over and over? Is there anything we can do to use this information for prevention?
There might be.
Is that worth exploring? To me, it would be. Maybe we're already doing that. I don't know. Like the errors.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the bulk of our cases fall into, you know, dispensing errors and diversion cases, and so we've got lots of things out there about how to prevent those and resources and the like. I mean, there might be something more we could do. I'm just not sure, Bill. On that.
Is there? Maybe that would be a good student project. Do you still have students?
I think
No.
Ellen's got one who's remoting in from time to time, so that might be something Ellen could discuss with Nikita. But yeah, we're a little challenged in the student supervision right now.
Well, I don't want to create work where there's.
No, that's what we're. I mean, if we're creating work because something we need to do, that's what we're supposed to do.
Well,
I have a lot of students coming my way. I'm getting double, I think, because some students aren't able to go into hospital settings and things like that. So I'm happy to volunteer students' time. I'm sure they would love to do that. I find it hard. I'm still struggling trying to find 2 or 3 students things to do. So if there's anything that I can help, if there's a way that we can put that together, I'm happy to volunteer a student's time for that. If that's something that you guys want to.
Yeah. Well, give us some thought. Because we know what the cases are. We're already categorizing them. Yeah, so there's
Right.
I don't know that there's a lot of data parsing to do. I think the question might be more about what sort of messaging, if any, would be productive from that. I know it's a good thought.
well, I know there's confidentiality issues too, but anyway.
Bill, I don't disagree with you. I think that you know, you might start thinking about this as being some kind of a thing that you could put together that would be a program that would be for students, or potentially a program that the board could present at you know, some meetings or whatever that are going on, you know, NCAP or you know, mutual or any kind of meetings that are going on, just to let people know where the issues are what they are, and just to sort of as an information kind of educational opportunity kind of thing. I don't know.
Hey, Wallace, we could go back to the days where we published everybody's individual discipline in the newsletter.
Well, that created more questions than it did.
I know.
Anyway.
I know that David Work at one time told me that he thought that was the biggest threat to his safety that he ever had during his years at the board. But yeah, well, that's something good to noodle over about and see if we've got some opportunities there.
Well, I think pharmacists by and large want to do the right thing, as long as they know what the right thing is. And if there's one big pothole, maybe it'll come. It'll be obvious.
Yeah. All righty. Crystal, do you want to say a few words about our ongoing planning for when we're going to be able to get back in the field?
Sure. But just to kind of segue back to that last conversation, I know Josh and I do presentations for pharmacist associations and for pharmacy students, and we do talk about examples of what kind of cases we're seeing and stuff like that. So we do a little bit of that, but I think it would be cool to put together something to kind of get out there for all the pharmacists. But we do talk about types of cases and stuff in our pharmacist association presentations and student presentations that we do.
Yeah. Could you pick one month maybe and put something on the the pharmacy FAQs or on the website that would be an educational?
Yeah, we can talk about that. I mean, we definitely can look at that and put something together and kind of utilize actually students with some of that stuff. So I think that would be really good. And we've got plenty of staff that are looking for projects, and are working really well with doing some of the projects. Segueing back into resuming field operation. So we are putting together a plan on resuming our field operations and what that's going to look like. We had a meeting about 3 weeks ago, I think now, with about 8 different boards of pharmacies. That went really well. It was just a roundtable discussion about what each state and how each state's handling resuming field operations. Some of them have resumed. Some of them are kind of, doing kind of what we are, is watching the numbers and seeing where that lands. So we're putting together a really good comprehensive plan to keep our staff safe when they're going, when we do resume to go back out in the field. We have already started to get a good inventory of PPE for our staff, thanks to Miss Ashley Duggins, who has helped us tremendously in getting some PPE and hand sanitizers and disinfectant wipes for staff's equipment. We have also reached out to DHHS and gotten some PPE, some extra layers of protections if our staff goes into a pharmacy and they're not following CDC guidelines or wearing masks. We want to make sure that our staff is fully protected. So we've been able to get a good amount of PPE for our staff. We're still trying to get some more, so we're just getting that inventory set. We are constantly following the numbers. Jay and I talk. The investigative staff or administrative staff talk once a week about kind of where we are with the numbers, what it looks like, what our percent positives are, and kind of what our comfort level is on staff going back out in the field. We do have, a few occasions where staff is going to have to go out into the field, and we're handling those currently case by case and making sure that if a staff member has to go out and do a pharmacy visit, that they do have the PPE that they need. But right now we are handling those case by case if it's something that's absolutely needed to get done. That's kind of where we are. Unfortunately, we're still in kind of a limbo with where our numbers are, since we are still rising in cases. We're kind of watching those percent positives and seeing, when the best time to resume field operations would be.
Let me add one other thing, is that board members, you all know, of course, what our inspection schedule is for pharmacies, and that our inspection schedules differ for different pharmacies based principally on what types of compounding services the pharmacy is providing. And with the inability to get fully back out in the field, that is creating some backlogs. And so another piece of what we are working on is an amended policy on inspections that Crystal is heading up great work on, and that I anticipate we will present to you all at the September meeting for your review and approval, if approval is the right thing to do, of course. But we are taking the same risk-based approach to modifying our inspection schedule that we took to the creation of that schedule in the first end. But it shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody that it's not realistic to think, given our staff numbers and the number of pharmacies, that we're going to be in any position that when folks can get back out in the field full time, that we're going to be able to go out and make up every single inspection that we weren't able to do during the lockdown. So we are looking at extending some dates due for pharmacies based on risk-based criteria. And like I say, we'll have that for you at the September meeting for your review, questions, and input, because I think that's all going to be perfectly defensible from a public health and safety standpoint, but we do need to have a policy in place, and we're working on that.
Jay, I have a quick question. Does the NABP have like some sort of a site where they're showing like state boards of pharmacy who's actually going out in the field and what their status is? Or is that just something that the boards of pharmacy are getting together to do?
I think there's an element of both. Ashley, I had to make a confession here. There has been a weekly state board execs call through NABP on Fridays. I have not been able to participate in that because it occurs at exactly the same time that the governor's COVID testing work group convenes. And so I haven't been able to participate in the NABP meeting. So I think folks are talking about that. What I would tell you, Ashley, is there, and I think, and Crystal can elaborate on this if she wants to, is that they're very different approaches. I mean, states that got their COVID situation under control, and it's still under control, are mostly out sort of resuming normal field operations. For states like us that are not, that's where you see a lot more variability. Suffice it to say that there seem to be some fairly pronounced differences in risk tolerance among some of these boards. Without naming names, I will say that I'm not sure that some of these boards that have very ambitiously returned into the field, I'm not sure that some of that would be justified under given the public health risks that are out there. But Crystal, what am I leaving out on that?
I was just going to say, Ashley, I got up with kind of my counterpart with Kentucky a few weeks ago, and we were just kind of round tabling and brought up the idea of grabbing some other boards. And we had, like I said, we had about eight different boards on the call about 3 weeks ago. And Jay is correct. Each one has its own way of how they've approached this. But we all learned from each other. I think everybody got a little bit out of the call and kind of learned from what each state is doing and adding that. I've also reached out to kind of field staff and kind of gauge their comfort levels and kind of what their concerns are. And so I've included a lot of that into the plan that we're putting together. So I'm constantly on calls throughout the day with different boards. So if I get a new board of pharmacy that I'm talking to during the week, I'm like, so what's your plans? How are you guys doing? And we just kind of pick each other's brain, after we're done talking about, what the original call was about. But, we're adding a lot of that stuff into our plan that we're putting together. And like I said, the biggest thing was I reached out to our field staff and kind of gauged their comfort level, had them kind of express what their concerns were, what they felt comfortable with. And a lot of that we put into that plan. So we wanted to make sure we addressed the field staff concerns for safety as well.
Okay, thank you, Crystal. That's awesome.
And what Crystal has done, I think, is so particularly useful too, is that it really is, I think, most important to get a sense of what other states with similar COVID exposure risks are right now. That's what tells us more than. And Crystal's done a phenomenal job, as she always does, of rounding up our neighboring states. So, for the most part, we're in the same boat on this and figuring it out. But there, like I say, there were a couple of instances where what Crystal reported to me that a couple of states were doing I was dumbfounded in terms of safety, but we're approaching it a little different way.
I'm glad you guys are being safe.
With that, then, I think that leads us to sort of the $64,000 question for this meeting, and today, that we need a decision on today, and that is what if anything, are we going to do about having a retreat? And Ashley and Bill, I both appreciate that you've been solicitous and patient with me as I discussed with you my sort of on the one hand and on the other hand, and let me just say from a staff perspective, I think two things. I think one, that a virtual retreat is hardly ideal. I think given the things that we would like to do and get moving on, having us all round up on computers, I'm not sure is going to be a particularly useful exercise to do that. Y'all may feel differently. I'm just saying from a staff perspective on that. In terms of an in-person retreat, folks, I got to tell you, I just don't think we're going to be in a position 8 weeks from now in which, from a safety standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. We're going to have to be in an indoor space. It's going to be challenging at best to try to maintain distancing and masking. I think you all know, too, that the epidemiological evidence has more or less shown at this point that COVID is airborne. And that's why outbreaks are being specifically associated with indoor events and not outdoor events, because folks, even if they're distanced, COVID tends to hang around in the air for hours at a time. So my recommendation or ask of the board would be, I think that we should acknowledge the reality of the situation here, plan to not have a retreat in September. We can have a regular meeting, of course, and some of the things that maybe I at least wanted to sort of bring out for the first time at a retreat, these can be regular agenda items. The MOU is a good example of that. But my suggestion would be, let's look to have a retreat when it's going to be safe to have a retreat, when we can all get together in person and have that robust discussion, recognizing that is very likely to be sometime next year before we're able to do that. So I'll stop my stump speech on that. Sorry, one more thing. Even if we were to have an in-person a retreat in September, do know that there are going to be some staff, at least, who would need to be a part of that retreat that will not be able to be there in person, period. So if we have a retreat in September, it's really not a binary choice of virtual or in person. It's virtual, it's full virtual or partial virtual is what really really where we're going to be on that. So I'm sorry, I'll shut up now, Ashley.
Yeah, and I'll just open it to the floor for any, I know Bill and I've kind of shared where we're at, and I don't know if there's other board members that want to share.
I would just, and look, we don't, just because I point out these things doesn't mean we're right and Jay's wrong, but we do have a number of activities happening at the university level from a standpoint of a small group get together. We're using social distancing and masking, and we're having an effective communications in meetings. We have a CE program scheduled for the end of August at Pinehurst, where there'll be 30 to 40 people. We have UNC is having their CE program that they have every year at Wilmington, and there will be people in attendance on site. There are a number of these activities that are going on around us where we're using proper social distancing and masking, and people are moving forward. So I would just point to those as examples of other groups and organizations that are trying to move forward and go ahead and have some of these activities. I think, obviously, I agree with Jay. A virtual retreat is a complete waste of time. I don't think it's effective. If nothing else, just dealing with the technology is no fun for anybody. And then, but I would say that the idea of that it'll be next year before we can have a retreat, I just don't agree with that logic. But maybe I'm being ignorant.
Keith, Michelle Wallace, your thoughts?
I think that, the tough part is, we've got 2 new board members, and, really, I've never met either of you personally, and I look forward to that one day. But I think that the board is not one person or even 2 people. I mean, it's a cohesive group, and I feel like that we need to meet at some point soon in person. Even if it's just maybe not the retreat, but a way to get to know one another a little bit. If it's an outdoor setting, whatever. I think we need to, at least be physically together at some point in time in 2020.
I don't know if can y'all hear me? I've hearing all of a sudden my connection has gone to pot, and I've gotten very little of the discussion, and I logged out and logged back in, and
we can hear you.
A chance that you guys.
You're coming through well, Wallace.
Okay. I agree that we need to meet sooner than later as far as trying to get face to face, just because I do think my whole philosophy on boards that it's as much about relationships, if not more about relationships, than it is about business. And most of y'all know me, but you don't know me. I mean, we haven't had a chance to sort of be face to face with a few of you have, but not with everybody. And so anyway, I think I agree that something needs to happen as soon as we can, possibly safely do it, reasonably do it. Which I don't know. I'd like to think we could figure out just because of working on trying to cultivate the relationships and things like that. So,
Michelle, would you like to add anything?
Yeah. I think everything I really think about it has been touched on. I do see the value clearly of face-to-face, which is why when I had the opportunity to meet the staff, I really did want to do it face-to-face. To the degree, though, that we must be safe. And I think like going to the Carolina Inn brings in so many other people, the hotel staff and, all of that would make it a little more challenging to do it in person. I'm not crazy about the idea of virtual because I think it's counterproductive to what a retreat really is. But I do have those same desires to meet with everybody and to get to know everybody. So to the degree that ultimately we can find a safe way, even if it's nothing else for us to have that introduction, maybe it's a picnic where we're outside or something like that so that we can all get together. I do think that's important, but safety first.
So Jay, with all those thoughts, is there something we could do? I mean, I'm clearly hearing everybody say that they'd like to get together, whether that be in a 2-day meeting or not. Is there a way that we could do it at the board? Is there a way we could just, I think everybody misses seeing each other, and I think we all feel like we're kind of maybe losing that connection, and I agree with everybody. So
Yeah,
it's about how we can-
I hear all that. Just let me, I'm going to push back a little bit though, is that while I hear all that, and it is nice to get together in person, you know, the medical board is absolutely pushed off their retreat for this reason, and they are sticking to virtual for the foreseeable future. And I'm not saying we have to do what the medical board does, obviously, but I understand the social dynamic, and I agree it's terribly important, particularly for Wallace and for Michelle, to get to know folks. But I guess what I would say is I do need you guys to give me a hard decision on a retreat for September or not, because if we're not going to do it, we got to work on our contract stuff with the Carolina, which I'm not concerned about. We'll be able to work that out. But I think that if you want to go forward with an in-person retreat in September, then what I would probably ask is that you designate 1 or 2 board members to sort of be the point person with me on how to do that, because it's going to be hard, and it's going to involve some staff risks that I think need to be considered in a very clear and thoughtful way about staff risk and indemnities and those sorts of things. So, I mean, you know, we can do all that. And in terms of just having a social, I mean, we could have a social thing. I'm open to ideas about that, but I'm really hesitant on the notion of having social things for the sake of having social things, and that I'm not concerned. I'm super concerned for a lot of reasons with that, but that's me. So
looks like Michelle would like to say something.
Yep.
So if you're looking for a hard answer for September, I think September is a bad idea. I don't think we're ready for that. So I want to make sure I'm real clear.
Yeah.
September, I don't think is a good idea. I don't think we're ready for that. But I do see the value of wanting to be of the social piece, but I do think that is clearly down the road. That's my vote.
So Jay, have you thought about the potential of us getting together as a board in the room or in the other? I know that there's that overflow room. To me, that seems like a bigger room. Is there a possible way that we could just maybe do a meeting there? I don't know. I don't know.
We can start working on that if that's what y'all want to do. But in terms of being able to properly distance in the boardroom, we would probably be able to get about 4 people in there total, 4 or 5 people total in the boardroom. So we would have to do 4 or 5 in that room. Then we would go and we would mark out as we've done once before. We could mark out the other room, and we could put some subset of the board. So we would probably wind up with something. If you wanted to pursue this, it might involve half the board members in the boardroom and maybe a staff member, half the board members and maybe a staff member in the overflow room. We'd have to figure out how to mesh that, and then we would have to. Then I'd help the staff figure out the others. The rest of the staff, we'd probably just have them come in virtually if we were going to do that to avoid getting sort of bound up here in the office of scooting around each other.
I have to say, I feel kind of bad for Wallace, because I feel like the last couple of meetings he's not been able to really be with us. I know his connection's been bad, but I feel bad for him.
Yeah.
I don't know if he can hear me or not. I know that he's struggling to stay connected. I don't know I don't know where to go from here. I don't know if anybody else wants to add anything.
Well, we got to decide. So. Well, I think it's
As
terrible.
far as having a retreat in September, I can see the. Okay. Just saying, I think the having the retreat in September is, probably too aggressive and probably a good idea to start negotiating Carolina in and do something different. I don't know whether November timeframe would be something that you could sort of see if I don't know how flexible be dating and that kind of stuff. But, maybe do it in a 2-month interval of, push it out to November or something and see if there's a possibility somewhere early November to do something. But and then I don't know whether, I about our commission meetings, we're assembling, and we've moved to the library because it's a much bigger room. We've got the chairs out around the room. That's, which maybe is an accurate comparison, but.
So Jay, what I'm hearing is I think that we should definitely cancel the retreat for September and maybe possibly look at the options of doing some sort of in-person, at least maybe October, November, depending on where COVID is. I don't know if that's a consensus.
Yeah, let me offer this. I think I understand where Wallace is coming from on maybe we go to and try to schedule the retreat for November, but I'd rather not take that specific approach because I think that we just don't have any idea what the COVID situation is. We don't know any more now what it's going to be in November. So I feel like we're constantly, I would feel better, or I think it would be a more rational approach to the retreat planning to just go to the Carolina Inn and say, look, we can't have it in September. We are going to have a retreat here. But we need to get to a point where things have stabilized. So I would like for us to get to that point, and then we can make a decision. If numbers stable, or we get to where there's a better reopening and things have stabilized, my guess is that we could probably schedule a retreat a month from whenever that happens. But I don't want to schedule one for November and then we get to September, October, and we're just doing the same thing. So I would suggest that we put an indefinite hold on the retreat until we can get some stability. In terms of an in-person board meeting, let us do some planning here at the board. Our choices would be, our only real choice would be we'd have to have it here. So staff, we're going to need to do some thinking about how would we space people here in the office, and how would we get communication going from room to room. But we can start looking at that, and come September, we could give you guys a better idea of if we were going to have an in-person board meeting here, here's what it would need to look like. And then we could go there. So we'll work on planning that and giving you a report in September, if that seems like a reasonable sort of proposal to move on that.
Personally, I think that's great if the rest of the board members are good with that.
My only concern is that by not trying to have an established time in the future for the retreat, that once we get past November, we're going to hit the holidays, and then we're going to be into 2021, and we still will not have had a retreat. And between now and then, at least down here in Bowie's Creek, our activities are continuing with careful social distancing and masking. And if we continue to be successful doing that, and folks don't have problems, then it would seem to me that we could do the same thing later this year, maybe November, and have a retreat. That's my only comment there. So we're basically saying at this point, if we do it that way, we're not going to have a retreat this year. And I don't know that that's the right thing to do. I don't want to bulldog everybody here. We're all supposed to throw out our opinions. I'm just throwing out an opinion here.
Well, I personally don't have the same level of anxiety about getting together others, but we can't have a retreat unless we're all in agreement. And I agree with you, Andy. If we don't get it done soon, it won't happen because this situation is not going to get any better. It's going to get worse this winter. And, it's sad and it's unfortunate, but, while it's pretty weather, maybe we need to find a venue outside. I'll be glad to cook hamburgers and bratwurst. Andy, you can bring the beer, and Ashley, you can bring the dog and the kids. Whatever. But
Well, I don't want to play prophet here and predict the future because none of us know what it's going to be. But, the next challenge is, say we get a vaccine, then we got to get everybody to take the vaccine. I mean, and I think we all know predictably what we think is going to happen with that. And people not willing to take a vaccine.
Well, I need to know what my instructions are here on this. I've said my piece. I hear where everybody's coming from. Andy, I fully understand what you're talking about, but I guess I approach this from, yes, there are risks that we can take. I'm trying to work around to not take risks for the sake of taking risks. And I know that's not what you're saying. I want to have,
possible, obviously, to not do the Carolina Inn and to let them know, but come back to the September board meeting with maybe some sort of social distancing that we could actually go to the board facility and maybe do some sort of a shortened retreat there in October, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, we can work on it. Yeah, I mean, if that's what y'all want us to do, by God, that's what we'll do, or bust hell wide open trying. I just want to state for the record that when we think about risk, it's not just risk to you as board members that we need to be thinking about. And so staff we will do, but I will, we'll do what you want us to do on this. But do know that there are going to be some staff who absolutely cannot participate in an in-person meeting until we are through this. And I certainly, and I know y'all would not want somebody who has a health reason that they can't do that to be a part of it. So we'll have to work it out. But I would say that if your thought is that if you want to have an in-person kind of sort of retreat, I don't know that having it here at the board is any better, frankly, than potentially having it at the Carolina Inn or wherever. I mean, the same risks are going to exist either place.
What about the Friday Center in a big room where we can spread out?
I mean, like I say, I will do whatever y'all tell me to do on this.
All kidding aside, an outdoor, I know you have the weather to contend with, but an outdoor setting would be the best compromise because obviously from activities we've seen, over the past several months at some sporting events and many other things, there's the data shows that outdoor gatherings, the risk is much lower.
I hear that, Keith. What I need y'all also to think about in terms of an outdoor gathering, though, is to remember that a retreat is still a public meeting that we have to announce. So if you want to have an outdoor retreat, we can look in venues to do that. But know that we're still going to have to come up with a technological solution to satisfy the Public Meeting Act requirements, which would include some sort of ability for folks in the public who want to participate. We would, need to set up some sort of technological way for them to do that, and some way, even in an outdoor proceeding, that all the discussions would be able to be heard in real time to satisfy the Public Meetings Act. So that creates its own, obviously, logistical challenges there.
In the past, we've not broadcast our retreats. We've just had it open to the public. Right?
Right, that's right. So
I didn't hear that. Could you say that again?
So what Bill said was at past retreats, we've recorded them. So we would have to figure out a mechanism to record them, but we just said and people who want to come can come. So yes, you're right, Bill. If we had an outdoor retreat, then we would need to provide an opportunity for anyone from the public who wished to come would be able to come. And so staff would have to figure out a way to deal with potentially members of the public showing up to be at the retreat in terms of the distancing and masking and all of that sort of stuff.
I have a quick question. What goes on since I've not been to one of your retreats? What goes on at the retreat that's mandatory that would need to be acted on, such that the retreat is a requirement? Is the retreat? I guess that's the question. Is the retreat a requirement?
No, it's not a requirement. But the board likes to, obviously what a retreat, the idea of the retreat is it presents you, there would be certain basic business that we would do that, we do at any meeting, the financial report and all of that sort of stuff. But the idea, as you would imagine, Michelle, is it's less structured. So it's an opportunity to sort of think about what are the big issues that we think are on our regulatory docket that we need to be planning for, rulemaking, potential rulemaking priorities, that sort of thing. Operational changes, for instance, if you want to get at about how we do meetings, when we do meetings, those sorts. So the big picture sort of stuff that's not super amenable to the very structured regular meeting, but so it's not required. That's the utility of it. But anytime a majority of the board gets together, it's a public meeting under the Public Meetings Act. So you have to go through all the same formalities you have to go through in terms of notice and opportunity to attend and recording and all that sort of stuff.
Okay, so it sounds like it's a regular type meeting. We can do that regular type stuff.
Yeah.
And handle that. Okay, I just wanted to make sure because then I am back at 100%. I will say postponing, but I don't know that we need to tag a deadline on it because we don't know what's going to happen with this virus. And so now we'll have the staff spinning their wheels to set up a meeting in November that could very easily get canceled because of COVID. So I would like to consider those types of things when we make our decision relative to just not having people do stuff for the sake of doing it. And I'm not trying to be touchy about it, but I cannot bring home COVID to my 91-year-old dad and my 86-year-old mother. So I just don't know that it's worth the risk if we are still in a situation, if the state is still situated the way we are right now relative to COVID.
So I'm gonna. This was a tough one. Anybody have anything else to add? I'm just going to propose that. Obviously, we should cancel with Carolina Ann. I don't think that's a good idea, Jay. I don't think we need to keep them hanging either. It's really not fair.
Yeah, and like I say, what the approach to the Carolina Inn would be. I mean, we've put a modest deposit down, but not, but would go to the Carolina Inn and say, when we can safely have a retreat, we're going to have a retreat, and we're going to have it with you. So keep our deposit, and as soon as things have stabilized, we'll be back to you. So that I'm not worried about. I don't think we need to fully cancel with the Carolina Inn. I'm not worried about the negotiation on that. We'll get that done.
So they'll hold our spot whenever we decide to do it.
Yeah.
I have one more thing just to add to it. I'm fine with postponing it, but as far as the staff goes, you guys want to understand that we may not act on some things that you would like us to act on as quickly because that's just the way it's going to have to be. I mean, because I think all of us.
You're right about that, Keith. You're absolutely right about that.
So, like this MOU and with the FDA and things that may just have to be. A lot of things may have to be put on the back burner and deal with essential business only until we can meet in person. I mean, if, because I mean, I feel like, the majority of the board members probably are okay moving forward at some point in time, but staff is not. So, with that said, if, we can, and I respect both sides. I mean, I'm not throwing stones at anybody because there's so much unknowns. But, with all that said, we may have to just be in an essential mode for a while longer. So, actually, I didn't mean to cut you off. I apologize.
No, Keith, you didn't at all. Thank you for saying that.
And I want to say, I don't want you guys to walk away from this thinking that staff is trying to be oppositional. I'll just say this. If you guys want to have an in-person retreat, you tell me when you want to have it and I will get it planned and we will have a retreat. I will be there. I will be there to facilitate it in any way you need to facilitate it. Just understand that I'm not going to put it to some staff members who couldn't do that to say, you've got to be there. I will do it. I will take the risk and be there for you guys, just as long as everybody understands that if other staff can't be there, it's not because they're trying to be oppositional or unhelpful, but it's a real public health issue. But I will.
And I don't view it as an opposition. I mean, we're all on the same team.
Right.
I didn't mean to come across like that, Jay, if I did.
No. I don't think you did. I didn't think you did. I just wanted y'all to understand that I'm not jumping up and down to say don't do it just to don't do it. The staff will absolutely carry out to the letter anything y'all want carried out. There may be adjustments in what those staff roles are, but we'll get it done.
I have a question for Michelle. Michelle, if we met in person in October or November, what would it take for you to feel safe?
I guess I don't want to appear to be some person who's like a little neurotic about it, because I'm not. But safe social distancing, kind of like what we did when I went to the board. I felt very safe. If we were distanced, there were masks. While I wanted to hug Ellen and Jay, I couldn't. So that sort of thing. So
we wanted to hug you too.
So I don't have these real stringent requirements. But going inside into a hotel where they are talking about this as airborne now, at a hotel where the staff is there and other guests are there who may have come from out of town and may have decided they want to quarantine. There are just so many unknowns. So to the degree that we can do the things that are suggested and really do that, I will be okay. I don't want to be, I'm not going to be the pea in the funnel either.
Yeah, I just kind of feel like that we as pharmacists, pharmacists are on the front line every single day. I mean, there's not been a day that I haven't waited on customers or whatever be the case. I just use as much caution, and by the grace of God, everything's been fine. But I just don't want us to set a standard for pharmacists that we're too afraid to meet in person when we expect them to be on the front lines. I don't know if that's a standard, I want to be respectful of that. So I propose that, obviously we put the Carolina Inn on the back burner. I agree with Michelle. I mean, there's going to be a lot more people there than just our small group of people that are going to put us at risk. But I do think that we need to look at in the near future, getting together in some form or fashion. And obviously that's going to have to be planned out. That's going to have to be, all things considered, we're going to have to use caution with that, obviously with the rules that everyone's following. I just think that we need to try to work on that if possible. That's just where I stand with that.
Well, I personally would like to see us plan something for October and maybe try to combine it with an outdoor venue with a catered meal. So we're limiting as much as possible our exposure to other individuals with social distancing and our own personal masking and such as that. And forget September, but let's try to do something for November October, while the weather is still hopefully decent. And if it makes more sense to do that there in the, the Raleigh-Durham Chapel Hill area, that's fine. It probably does for,
Can I just, let me just, a couple of things. We'll start planning on this in terms of what we can do here in our building. I will point out that the number of people that would need to be involved in here is we had the meet and greet for Michelle, but that was about 1/4 the number of people that would be in this building for a board meeting. So that's going to just means it's going to be more complicated, obviously. I would, and I hear what everybody's saying about an outdoor venue, but I want to go back to if it's a matter, I don't know what, I want to be clear what's being asked for in terms of an outdoor venue. If it's to have the meeting itself in an outdoor venue, I think that is a bad idea because, again, it's a public meeting. We're going to have to make it open to be, so we're going to be put in a position where some number of staff are going to have to be the folks who put people where we're going to have to be the bodyguards, as it were, that we're going to have to make sure people are masked, make sure they're distanced, figured out how to do that. We're going to have to enforce that. And all the general public meeting act difficulties that come along with recording and the like. But I'm not sure that's what's being asked. Is the ask about having a meeting and then maybe having a lunch at an outdoor, or are we still talking about having an outdoor meeting itself?
Well, I'm fine with the actual board meeting business being conducted virtually. My hope was to have the actual retreat type information done face to face.
Right.
With that involving Carolina Inn or some other large organization that would bring in lots of other potentially infectious individuals. So a combination of the two. I understand the board meeting itself must be, an open meeting, and as well as the retreat, but we can, I'm hoping that we can find a middle ground without it being too overly complex.
I'm going to need help. I'm going to need help. I'm going to need a lot of help on this, which is fine, but it's, anyway, we'll staff will get on it. We'll get on it in whatever way y'all want it.
So could board members maybe send Jay some ideas about what we think that might look like just to help staff? I mean, I know that this is all so complicated and it's just the world that we're living in now, but Jay, would that help you at all so that maybe we
Sure.
can add some ideas?
I'd be happy to get any and all suggestions we can get.
Okay.
They need to be suggestions focused on the realities that a retreat is also a public meeting. So an understanding that we have to notice that, and anybody who wants to show up for that can show up for that. So we have to think about, like, for example, we will not in a public meeting be able to say, we're having a retreat. And here's the notice, and it's going to be at this venue. But there's, either we're going to have to live stream it out there so people can participate virtually, which we will not be able to do in any sort of outdoor venue. So we would have to give them the opportunity. They would have to be given the opportunity to attend. So there's got to be a lot of thought put into place about what kind of, when somebody comes and says they want to attend, we're going to do temperature checks. We're going to give masks. We're going to move them around, all of that stuff. We got to think about the recording. I need your suggestions on this, and certainly I can work with folks at DHHS and the like to try to see what their suggestions would be.
This is the last thing I'm saying about this, I promise. but I do feel that there is a certain level of we're here again with numbers rising because we've done some non-essential things too soon. So, and I really, really would like to be physically in your presence to be able to meet you all and look you in your eyes. I really want that, but I don't want to do it at the risk of exposing us to stuff that we don't need. The pharmacist, I am considered the financial industry. So we haven't had a break at work either. We've been considered essential. And so we go in every day and we put our lives on the line. And I just don't think if it's not an essential reason that we need to be together, then we might just need to rethink it. And I promise that's it I'm going to say about it. Thank you for indulging me.
Well, we have several weeks to think about this, to let it go on the back burner. Nothing is decided today except that we're not going to meet at the Carolina Inn in September.
Yeah, right. That's the main thing.
And there's a lot that could change in 4 to 6 weeks.
Right. Look, I want more than as much as everybody else. I would love if in 8 weeks the trends look like they're all going in the right direction and make it easier. And I'm not insensitive. I appreciate everything that's been said here, and we'll sort of, maybe Kristen and I will put our heads together about thinking about if we were going to have something in this building, we'll start doing some measurements about where folks could be and how we could be, and do some thinking about that in the interim. I'm not going to pursue an outdoor meeting thing right now unless you really, really are set on that, because I think that's sort of an order of magnitude more complicated. And if we're going to start getting into that, we need to have a venue, we need to sign a contract, we need to get started on that. So I'd rather, that I think is very hard to do in the abstract. We would need to have picked a venue and be thinking about the physical planning. But I'll work with staff on what we could do here, and think about that, and certainly I'll keep reporting back to you guys regularly. I won't wait until September and say here it is. I'll keep reporting to you guys as we're going through it.
Okay, I think that's a good plan, Jay, and I appreciate you working with us.
No, I'm happy to do it. Just let me say this, is that again, Andy, I do appreciate you guys are getting together, and I do appreciate pharmacists are out there. But I will tell you, being on these weekly calls every week and hearing about spread and the like, I'm just particularly sensitive to, I think Michelle captured it pretty well. We're all having to take risks. We all have to take essential risk. What's really essential? That's the hard decision, and there's no right or wrong answer to that, obviously, but that's where I am. That's where I come from on this.
So Jay, I'm not sure how much is left. I know there's not a whole lot, but there has been a request to go to the restroom. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know Wallace has got an appointment this afternoon, but I think if we take a 10-minute break and come back, there's only 30 seconds on NABP District 3. There's the consent agenda. And then we have closed session for a couple of possible summary suspensions. So it's probably 15, 20 minutes total, but no problem taking a break now.
Is that okay with everybody?
I propose we be back at 12 noon sharp.
Okay.
That's 8 minutes.
Yep. All right. Good here. So Ashley, I guess we'll reconvene in 8 minutes.
Perfect. Sounds great.
All right. Oh, there. I'm back. I was having trouble figuring out how to turn my camera on.
All right, so I think it's 12. I think that's Andy's. Andy's not back. Oh, there he is.
All right.
I don't know about Keith.
I'm here.
Hey, man.
Me and my poor internet connection.
And Wallace and Michelle, are you still there?
Yep, there's Michelle.
Here I am.
I don't see Wallace on camera yet, so. Not that Wallace is somebody who should be seen on camera, but that's.
So while we're waiting, Antoine, can you help us understand bandwidth and why sometimes it fades in and out? And yesterday we had some hiccups, and I think the problem was here at my house with the wireless. But the closer I got to the wireless router, the better the signal got.
Yeah, absolutely. You have
how much the other coming and going is out of our control, basically.
The recommended thing is to have it hardwired for any type of video conferencing. Wireless is always going to be hit or miss because there's so many interferences. But I can definitely work with each one individually in regards to how to get hardwired based on the type of equipment that you currently have.
Well, with a Microsoft Surface, there's no Ethernet for it, so we'd have to use some sort of adapter.
I have a docking station that will work perfectly for your Surface, Bill, if it's the same one that you had in the office.
It's the same one.
Yeah, I have a docking station that will work and would allow you to actually connect through Ethernet.
Okay, so that'd be the way to do that. All right.
That's correct.
That's what we do here, Bill. All of us are on the same surfaces, and we're all using a docking station so that we're hardwired into the internet. I don't see Wallace on camera, but I don't know if it's because the camera's frozen. I'm gonna text him real quick just to.
I would say that he's not frozen. I see a couple of movement in the background, but you might want to put him down.
Okay.
Hey, Jay.
Yep.
While we're waiting on Wallace, this isn't, it isn't critical path, I guess. But Jay and I had a conversation last week just to let folks know. At last check, I think most of us understand and realize that Idaho had started letting pharmacy technicians physically give flu shots, vaccinations. Actually, some other states have started to do that too. And the reason that that's come to my attention, and if you guys already know that, then I apologize for being behind. But I had a pharmacy technician training program out of one of the counties contact me about the APHA immunization training program for pharmacy technicians. And so we directed them accordingly and made sure that they knew that that was a state-by-state issue, that the vast majority of states do not allow pharmacy technicians to give injections. But just in case you were to get a question or hear about some things, I think the Washington State has decided to move in that direction. And I think Rhode Island, if I'm not mistaken, and there might be one other, but nonetheless, just know that that's out there. It's not just Idaho anymore.
I see Wallace. Hey, brother.
Yeah, sorry.
No, you're good. Ashley, I think we're all present and accounted for.
All right, sounds good. So I know we just have a few more things.
Yep. So District 3 virtual meeting, just a reminder, you all know this. It's Wednesday, August 12th. If you haven't already, be sure you go on to the NABP District 3 website and make sure you're registered for that. Cindy's on vacation this week, but it's going to be a Zoom format. So Cindy's working on that. The agenda, which is essential only, is posted on there. So just a reminder to take a look at that. And Michelle, I know you've never attended a District 3 meeting. So as the time, I'll send you the link to the website specifically, so you make sure you're registered for that if you want to be, and then you and I can round up separately, and I'll sort of talk through what District 3 is and sort of what the key business is that occurred during that meeting.
Can I ask a question about that? Is there a registration fee?
No, there's no fee.
Okay.
Yeah. Because since it's essential only, there's not going to be any CE. So there are some small costs that we're incurring for a Zoom account and some of that, but they're relatively minor, and the district's in great shape to cover those.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. We have no reports to the board. Consent agenda. You have two proposed consent orders on the agenda. Those are the product of pre-hearing conference yesterday. My most sincere thanks to Bill. It was our first run at pre-hearing conferences online. We did have some technical gremlins at the very beginning, but we got them resolved. I think we can work more toward hardwiring on some of these. That should take care of a lot of the rest of it. But two proposed consent orders did emerge from that and were posted to your site yesterday. One is a modification of a consent order of a discipline, and the other is a consent order reinstating a license with conditions. Those were both cases that I don't want to speak for Bill, but everybody from PHP, board staff, and Bill were all in agreement that these were fair of these cases.
Yeah, and thanks to NCPHP staff, to which we are very much indebted for advocating for both of these folks. I just don't see how we could make these kind of judgments if we didn't have them.
No, we are fortunate indeed, and this board has a long history of being ahead of the curve on that. First with PRN and now with PHP. But Bill, again, thank you. It's these weighty cases are not ideally, in my mind, suited for a teleconference, but you handled it exceptionally well, and I felt like that all the parties were able to be heard fairly and fully.
Well, I don't think these were particularly contentious, but I would just ask if Michelle had any questions about what it is we're talking about. And so
now, Michelle, he's about pre-hearing conferences. Certainly when we had the meet and greet with Michelle, we talked about what pre-hearing conferences were and how they occurred and the like. And sort of we know that one of the things that we need to do when we can be in person is give Michelle some opportunities to come and be at those pre-hearing conferences and observe them and ask questions. But I'm sorry, Michelle, I was stepping all over you there.
No, you're fine. That's exactly right. When I went to the meet and greet, they did explain to me kind of every area of the Board of Pharmacy and what they do. And it was my understanding that at some point in time, I would be thrown in to do that. But leading up to it, that I would have an opportunity. And that I understood from that basically a lot of times these pre-conference hearings will handle everything before it gets to the full board. So those are the types of things that were discussed, and I'm excited to participate in those when the time comes.
Well, Michelle, just to let you know, the first time I did one, I was mortified, but the board staff made it, Clint, Jay made it so easy and literally was able to answer any question that I had. So you know, when you go into those, you're thinking, oh my goodness, you know, what am I supposed to do here? But they do a great job of making you comfortable with that and knowing what's going on and giving you all the information that you need. So don't be like me and don't be scared going into that. It'll be perfectly fine.
I'm petrified, but okay, I'll take your word for it. Thank you.
As we discussed, what you bring into that is a lifetime of experience and good judgment and an open mind to hearing the facts of a case. And all of you have that in spades. So it really, Michelle, is more about sort of seeing the process. I have no concerns whatsoever about the substance of moving through those cases. You'll be great.
Thank you.
And the public member perspective in those cases is often, in many ways, the most valuable perspective in some of those cases. So you will be a contributor without question. That's it. That's what we've got on the consent agenda then, Madam President. So if there are no questions about it, it's certainly ripe for action by the board.
All righty.
We need a motion.
Is there closed session, Jay?
There will be. We need a motion on this, and then we'll need to move to go into closed session.
Yeah, so is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make that motion.
Okay. Second?
Second.
We have a motion from Andy and a second from Michelle. Without further discussion, Ashley, if you'd like, I'll go ahead and call the roll.
Perfect.
Okay, indicate yay or nay. Ashley?
Yay.
Bill?
Yay.
Keith?
Yay.
Andy?
I'll say yay because you said yay or nay, but I really want to say ahoy. But
Either way, we'll document it accordingly. Wallace?
Yay. Yay.
And
yay,
Michelle?
Yay.
And, all right. And Bill, we'll let the minutes reflect that since you were the pre-hearing officer on both of those cases, that officially you were recused from those.
Well, I wondered about that.
Yeah, we'll make that notation in the minutes.
Okay. Just Antoine.
Yep.
Just for the record, there were no comments or questions that were posed on YouTube. So just an
okay. Thank you, Antoine. I forgot to ask. Appreciate you.
And Jay, I know that I think maybe Cindy had provided us last year at like this time, like a list of the months that everybody is due for their pre-hearing conferences. So
yeah, I'll get the. We've redone. We needed to redo the schedule because of board changes. Like we had Robert in there, so I will. We'll get the schedule redrawn up and out there. And Michelle, you will probably we'll put your schedule probably into 2021. With an anticipation that sometime between now and the first time you're the actual pre-hearing officer, you've had a chance to participate. And what we could probably do, Michelle, is if this lengthens out, is we have another teleconference PHC. We can certainly remote you in on that as well.
Okay, I would like that. And there's one thing I'd probably a little out of order: the committee appointments.
Right.
Did we talk about that, or did I miss that?
No, yeah, we did that last time.
No. We talk about it this time because I do want to look at somebody. I need to know what I need to do for this.
Oh, for the actual committees,
right? And so I'm sorry. I'm on the agenda, and I was like, oh my goodness, I didn't get I forgot to ask my question about that. So
no, we actually don't have any committee reports to this, and that's where we're getting into. All the committees are in stasis right now. Are you looking at the minutes, Michelle, or are you looking at the agenda?
For the last minutes, I was looking at the last minutes, but I wanted to make sure that I did what I need to do to participate on the Budget and Finance Committee.
Yeah, there's nothing on the horizon with them. That we'll kick that up in earnest probably in April. We start planning for the next.
And somebody will let me know.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Then I'm good.
Yep. No question. Thanks, Michelle.
No problem.
With that, then, Madam President, we do have two matters for closed session, both involving potential summary suspension. So it's the board's will to discuss those. We'd need to have a motion to go into closed session.
All right.
Motion for closed session.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion by Andy, seconded by Ashley to move into closed session to discuss potential summary suspensions. I will call the roll. Ashley?
Yay.
Bill? Bill, are you a yay or a nay on closed session?
I'm sorry, I had to go and get my power cord. Yes, let's, yay.
Okay. Keith?
Yay, closed
Yay.
session.
Andy?
Yes, sir.
Wallace?
Yes.
And Michelle?
Yes.
All righty. So we are